I was a park ranger, patrolling the vast expanse of Yosemite National Park, a place of untamed beauty and lurking danger. As the day wore on, the familiar sounds of the forest gave way to an eerie silence. The birds had ceased their cheerful songs, and the wind seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. It was as if nature itself was holding its collective breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold. A sudden gust of wind sent a chill down my spine as I approached a clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its once white paint peeling and its windows boarded up. I had never seen the structure before, and a sense of unease crept over me as I drew closer. As I reached the porch, the sound of a creaking door echoed through the clearing. I hesitated for a moment before cautiously pushing it open. The air inside was thick with dust and decay, and a musty smell permeated the room. I felt a cold spot on my neck and turned to find a pair of glowing red eyes staring at me from the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly backed away from the cabin. The eyes followed me, their crimson glow illuminating the dim interior. As I stumbled backward, I tripped over a loose board and fell heavily to the ground. Pain shot through my leg, and I gasped in agony. Darkness enveloped me as I lay on the cold, unforgiving earth. I could hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching, and the glowing red eyes drew closer. I closed my eyes and braced myself for the inevitable. But then, silence. Slowly, I opened one eye and peered into the darkness. The glowing eyes had vanished, and the footsteps had retreated into the forest. I struggled to my feet, my leg throbbing with pain, and stumbled back towards the safety of the trail. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just escaped a fate far worse than death. The dream I had had years ago, of a circular stone gift shop perched on the edge of a cliff, had come true. And now, I had stumbled upon a cursed cabin in the depths of the wilderness. In the days that followed, I tried to rationalize what had happened. Perhaps it was all just a coincidence, a series of strange events that had no real meaning. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had seen something that I could not explain, and it had left an indelible mark on my soul. I continued my patrols, but the carefree spirit that had once defined my work had vanished. I was always on edge, constantly scanning my surroundings for any sign of danger. The beauty of the park had become a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath its surface. One night, as I sat alone in my cabin, I heard a faint scratching at the door. I slowly rose from my chair and cautiously approached, my heart pounding in my chest. As I opened the door, a gust of icy wind swept through the room, extinguishing the lamp on my desk. Darkness enveloped me once more, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The scratching at the door continued, louder this time. I reached for the doorknob, but my hand froze in midair. I knew what was coming. With a swift movement, the door flew open and a grotesque creature stepped inside. Its eyes glowed with an evil intelligence, and its razor-sharp claws dripped with blood. It lunged at me, its foul breath hot on my skin. I dodged its attack and stumbled backward, desperate to escape. But the creature was too fast. It pinned me against the wall, its claws sinking into my flesh. I screamed in agony as darkness consumed me. When I awoke, I was lying in a hospital bed, my body bandaged and bruised. I had somehow survived the attack, but the memory of that night would haunt me for the rest of my life. The park ranger who found me told me that I had been delirious when they arrived. I had been muttering about a cursed cabin and a creature from the darkness. They had dismissed it as the ramblings of a traumatized mind, but I knew the truth. I had seen the creature that lurked in the shadows of Yosemite, and I knew that it would never truly be vanquished. It was a part of the park now, a dark stain on its pristine beauty. And so, I resigned from my position as a park ranger. I could no longer bear to patrol the land that had become a prison of fear. I moved away from Yosemite, far away from the cursed cabin and the creature that haunted it. The air in the Old Faithful Inn was thick with a hushed reverence. The towering lobby, a breathtaking cathedral of wood and stone, was usually abuzz with tourists, their voices echoing off the soaring ceilings. But tonight, the vast space was cloaked in a chilling silence, the only sound the rhythmic creak of the aging timbers underfoot. As a ranger, I was used to the eerie stillness that descended upon the inn after closing hours, but tonight, there was a palpable sense of foreboding in the air. I had been patrolling the upper floors, my boots echoing softly in the long, dimly lit hallways. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing the ornate wood carvings and vintage furniture, remnants of a bygone era. The shadows in the corners of the rooms seemed to writhe, taking on the shapes of unseen beings, a chilling reminder of the stories I had heard about the inn. Whispers of apparitions, restless souls forever tethered to the place where their lives were cut short. At first, I dismissed them as mere superstition, a product of the inn's history and the imagination of those who lived in its shadow. However, as the years passed, I found myself increasingly drawn to the inexplicable. There were subtle occurrences, a cold draft that brushed past my face, the sound of muffled laughter in a deserted corridor, flickering lights casting strange, elongated shadows. But tonight, the whispers were undeniable. They seemed to come from the heart of the inn, a hauntingly familiar melody carried on a phantom breeze. My heart pounded in my chest, a primal fear seizing me as I followed the sound, my footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The whispers seemed to beckon me, urging me to investigate their source. I found myself drawn to an abandoned room at the end of the longest hallway, its door half ajar. The flickering light emanating from within seemed to pulse with an unseen heartbeat. I hesitated, my hand trembling on the doorknob, but the curiosity that had always been my undoing pulled me forward. The room was shrouded in darkness, the air thick and heavy with dust and the scent of decay. As my eyes adjusted, I saw her, a figure draped in a long, flowing gown, standing by the window. Her features, indistinct in the dim light, seemed etched with sorrow, her eyes, pools of melancholy, fixed on the distant landscape. I stood frozen, my breath catching in my throat. This was no mere figment of my imagination. Her spectral form shimmered with ethereal light, a fragile apparition that seemed to be both present and absent. A cold wave of energy washed over me, carrying with it a weight of untold sorrow and longing. Unable to speak, I reached out, my trembling hand stretching towards her. As my fingers brushed against the spectral surface of her being, a jolt of energy coursed through me. It was an indescribable sensation, a mixture of ice and fire, leaving me breathless and shivering. In that fleeting touch, I saw her life unfold before me. Her name, whispered in the wind, was Amelia, a young woman whose laughter had once echoed through these very halls. A beautiful artist with a passion for the wilderness, she had come to Yellowstone to seek inspiration, to capture the raw beauty of its landscapes on canvas. But fate had dealt her a cruel hand. A fall from a treacherous cliff, a lost life, a tragedy that had left her spirit trapped in this grand old inn. Her sorrow, her longing for a life cut short, surged through me, binding me to her spectral embrace. I finally found my voice, its shaky whisper breaking the silence. "Amelia," I spoke, my voice barely a breath. "I see you, I feel you. Tell me your story." Her gaze, filled with a lifetime of sorrow, turned to me. The faintest wisp of a smile, a bittersweet expression of recognition, graced her spectral lips. Her voice, a sigh of wind, carried the tale of her life and her tragic death. She spoke of a love she had lost, a life she had been denied. And finally, as the first rays of dawn touched the mountain peaks, she spoke of the solace she found, a sense of peace that had been elusive for so long. With the first light of day, the figure of Amelia faded, her spectral form dissolving into the ethereal mist that hung in the air. But the memory of her, the weight of her sorrow and the chilling touch of her ethereal hand, lingered long after she was gone. I returned to my duties, the weight of Amelia's story heavy on my heart. I had witnessed a glimpse of the supernatural, a world beyond our comprehension. I had felt the lingering presence of those who had passed, their stories woven into the fabric of this grand old inn. From that day forward, I saw Yellowstone in a different light. The whispered tales of spectral inhabitants were no longer dismissed as superstition. They were reminders of the unseen forces that shaped our world, whispers of the past that lingered in the present, a testament to the enduring power of human stories. the hushed corridors of the old faithful, and continued to hold their secrets. But for me, they now whispered tales of a love lost and a life cut short, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring spirit of those who had passed. I knew I would never be the same again, forever bound to Yellowstone's spectral embrace. The memory of Amelia, her sorrow and her yearning, would forever be a part of me, a silent companion on my journeys through the untamed wilderness. And as I patrolled the long hallways of the inn, I listened for the whispers, the faint echoes of a past life, a spectral melody that haunted the heart of the inn. I listened for the sound of Amelia's laughter, a fleeting reminder of the beauty and fragility of life, a haunting reminder of the spectral presence that forever shaped the landscape of my soul. I was patrolling a remote trail deep within the shadowy embrace of the Pacific Northwest. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant cries of birds. My boots crunched softly on the dirt path as I made my rounds, my eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble. I had heard tales of lost souls and restless spirits haunting these woods, appearing to travelers in moments of vulnerability. But I had always dismissed them as mere campfire stories, meant to scare the faint of heart. That was before this afternoon. Earlier, I encountered a young couple, their faces etched with fear and their voices trembling as they recounted a disturbing hike they had just completed. They described encountering a strange man on the trail, a figure dressed in incongruous attire, sleek black dress shoes and street clothes, utterly unsuitable for hiking in the rugged wilderness. The way they spoke sent a chill down my spine, for their tale echoed the same stories I had once scoffed at. As they continued, the couple insisted there was no logical way the man could have reached their remote location, far from any road or dwelling. They had been hiking for hours, and they had not seen or heard anyone else the entire time. As dusk began to envelop the forest, casting long shadows that danced and twisted among the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The man's ghostly appearance, pale, thin, and moving with an unnatural swiftness, suggested something otherworldly. Was he a lost spirit, doomed to wander these trails forever, seeking an elusive destination? I left that encounter with more questions than answers, haunted by the mysteries of the wilderness that often defy explanation and stir primal fears. Days turned into nights, but I found myself unable to shake the memory of the couple's encounter. I began to notice strange things happening in the forest, unexplained noises, fleeting shadows, and a palpable sense of being watched. It was as if the woods themselves were conspiring against me, playing upon my fears and testing my resolve. One evening, as I patrolled the same trail where the couple had seen the strange man, I witnessed something that chilled me to the bone. I was rounding a bend when I caught sight of a figure standing in the middle of the path. It was the man, dressed in the same incongruous attire as before. He stood perfectly still, his back to me. As I approached cautiously, I called out to him, but he did not respond. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. Just as I was about to reach him, he turned slowly to face me. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes hollow and devoid of life. He stared at me with an expression of cold indifference, as if I were nothing more than an insignificant obstacle in his path. A wave of terror washed over me, and I stumbled backward, tripping and falling to the ground. As I lay there, helpless and vulnerable, the man leaned over me, his breath cold against my skin. I could see my own reflection in his eyes, a distorted image of fear and desperation. "You cannot escape," he whispered, his voice a raspy echo that seemed to come from the depths of the forest itself. "This place belongs to us now." Time seemed to slow down as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. Was I dreaming? Was this some cruel nightmare from which I could not awaken? I closed my eyes, hoping that when I opened them, the horror would be gone. But when I looked again, the man was still there, his face inches from mine. His eyes burned into my soul, and I felt a surge of despair that I had never known before. I knew then that my life was forfeit. I closed my eyes and waited for the end. But it never came. When I opened my eyes again, the man was gone. I was alone in the forest, the moonlight casting eerie shadows all around me. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not stopping until I reached the safety of my cabin. I never saw the strange man again, but I could never forget the encounter. The memory of his cold, indifferent stare haunted my dreams, and the feeling of terror never truly left me. I became a different person after that night. I was no longer the carefree park ranger who had once patrolled the trails with a sense of peace and confidence. Now, I was a haunted man, forever scarred by the horrors I had witnessed in the depths of the wilderness. I continued to work as a park ranger, but I never went back to that trail. I couldn't bear the thought of returning to the place where I had faced my greatest fear. Instead, I patrolled other areas of the park, areas that were more familiar and less likely to hold hidden horrors. But even in the safety of these other trails, I could never fully escape the memory of the strange man.